Hi, everybody. My name is Shalev. I'm a game designer and narrative designer. I used to work for Plarium in the past. I made this big action-driving game, and now I'm making my own indie weird text adventure for mobile, seeing here. You can actually see it. It's right outside of the hall if you go towards. Don't go right now. When you're headed for the lunch area, it's right on the way on the left. You can see my new game. It's on display. But today I'm not talking to you as a game designer or a narrative designer. Today I'm wearing my other hat. I'm a games curator. I've done a lot of game exhibitions, game events, events when we show different games to the public over the past few years, like this one here, or this one, or this one, or this one. Lots of different events where I showcased games by different creators. And today I want to talk to you about how we went about and how we go about adapting your game for public exhibition. So in this talk, we're going to start by examining how normal gameplay is different than the gameplay you have in exhibitions and in public events. We're going to try to define what an exhibition build of your game should do. I'm going to give you some design ideas, I'm going to give you some technical ideas, and we're going to try to end with a case study. So, when you think about the common settings, the normal environment and the normal devices you use when you play video games, usually, maybe look like something like this when you're playing on a PC, or something like this when you're playing a console. On mobile games, maybe something like this. But when you're in an exhibition or a public event, things are very, very different. Look at this photo taken 2 weeks ago in GIC in Poznan, another games conference. Can you even see me? I'm in this picture as well, but right there in a very, very big environment with a lot of people, and you know, because you go to conferences, that the camera is lying, and in the real setting, you know, the angle is wider, and there's so many people around you. And this is just a commercial game show type of gameplay experience, but you also have now the art exhibitions, the game exhibitions. These are becoming more and more important, especially if you're an indie developer, because indies need the accolades and the media coverage of all these new types of game shows and game exhibitions. And the settings vary widely, and the way you play the game varies widely between personal devices and in the common settings and the settings you have in an exhibition. So let's try to kind of look at some of the principal differences between these two types of experiences. And I divided it to a few categories: continuity, time, attention, and privacy. So when you're playing on a personal device, in terms of continuity, the gameplay is successive. You can play session after session after session, and these sessions build upon each other. Not just that you advance in the levels in the game, you know, you reach a higher level and something more complicated, but also your own experience as a player advances. You learn more and more, and you get deeper into the game. When you play a game in an exhibition, when a player meets your game in an exhibition like the one just outside of this hall, you know, the session is discrete. You know, they're going to play your game one time for the one time where they meet the game. This is a discrete session. That's the whole experience. And the next time, if there is a next time they meet your game, it's going to be a few months from now when the game launches and they buy it, or if they're press, when they get a press build for review and something like that. So it's a different experience, a separate experience from playing the game on a normal device that's yours. From the sense of time, on personal devices, the gameplay time is endless or potentially endless. Of course, you have sessions. Of course, your game has a certain amount of length and a certain amount of content in it, but the player has the potential to play it as much as they like. In an exhibition, in a public event, the gameplay time is very limited. You have always somewhere to go, some talk like this, to go to another game to see down the hall. Your friends are bugging you to come. You don't feel comfortable because there's people around you. So the gameplay time is very limited. And the same is with the attention. When I'm talking about playing a game on a personal device, the attention is potentially high. I'm saying potentially because, of course, when you play games, it is still part of life. And we have all these distractions around us. Maybe we're at work, maybe we're on the bus, on our mobile phone, maybe something happens, you have to go somewhere, but you have the potential of having very, very, very high attention focused on the game you're playing. When you're in an exhibition, your attention span as a player is potentially low. Well, I say potentially, I mean because, of course, some of us gamers, we have this capability of focusing on the game and, and being really, really into it. But still, like I said before, this is still an exhibition. Your friends are there, your colleagues are there, they're calling you to come. There's some other things you want to see. Some people are picking behind your back. There's lots of noise. So there's lots of things that can take the player out of your experience, and they don't have as much attention as they have with a personal device. And lastly, privacy. We're not going to touch on how to address that a lot in this talk, but still it's very important to acknowledge. When you're on a personal device, you have a lot of privacy. Of course, when you're in your home playing on your PC or on your console, but also when you have a mobile device, usually people don't see what you're doing, and that affects the way people play and experience your game. In an exhibition settings, the privacy of the gameplay is low to zero. Usually, there are people picking behind the back of the player. There's the developer usually somewhere around, or somebody from the team showcasing the game. Screens might be showing it so people can see it from afar. And people experience that when they play the game. They play the game differently because it's not so private. So, what do we want from an exhibition build? First of all, we want for as many people as possible to have a clear idea of your game. Many people don't have to explain. You bring your game to an exhibition because you want it exposed, and you want a lot of people to talk about it. Clear idea is important to note. You want people to come out of the experience of playing your game in an exhibition and being able to convey to other people what they saw, what they felt, how it played. So it's very important to consider how we create this exhibition mode to allow for people to talk about your game clearly. You want for everyone to have a pleasant experience. Seems pretty simple, right? What I wanted to say with that is, when I'm talking about everyone, this is not just the players, the visitors to your booth. I'm talking about you as well as a developer. You standing there, we're making art, we're making games. These things require a lot of conviction. And we need to come out of these events, of this really, really exhausting game events with energies and good feels, so we can go to another one, we can go to another 50 events and showcase our game. So we want a good experience for everybody. And lastly, and this relates to my previous point, to let the game speak for itself so you can speak on other things. What I mean by that is, I see it all the time, developers showcasing their game, and they're busy explaining stuff to the players while they're playing and after they're playing, trying to explain what happened and what's important there. You want to create a build that tries as much as you can to speak for itself, to convey what the game is about, so you can talk with people about other stuff that may be in the game that they didn't see, so you can talk with them about maybe a publishing deal, if it's somebody who wants to publish your game, etc., etc. You have other stuff to talk about, let the game speak for itself. How do we do that? Sorry, before I go to how we do that, a disclaimer. I'm going to show a lot of tips and ideas in this talk. Not every tip is good for every game. Games is a very diverse medium with lots of mechanics and lots of different types of games and different types of players. And even the game I'm showcasing outside right now, my own game, our exhibition build doesn't adhere to all the tips I'm showcasing here, but I think for a lot of games, these all are very, very good tips, and you can choose for yourself whether one tip or another is good for you. That's just a disclaimer. This is not a kind of a cookie-cutter thing. So, when you're making your exhibition build, I want you to think about two aspects: precision and stability. And I'm going to address each one of them after the other. So when I'm talking about precision, I'm talking about a game experience that is to the point and it proves your point. You're trying to make an exhibition build that shows exactly what your game is about from the very beginning or close to the very beginning. So we'll address that through 4 issues: mechanics, content, time, and the question of tutorials. Mechanics. Try to start the experience, your game experience, where your core mechanics are fully revealed. Usually, especially in complex games, but also in simple games, you try to lead your player into the experience of the core mechanic. That's what the game is about. In exhibition settings, you might want to consider putting them sort of in the action, maybe not in a very hard level, but in a level where your game is already in its full glory, at least when you consider core mechanics. On the other hand, you might want to avoid secondary mechanics. So for example, if you're making a Diablo-style hack-and-slash action-adventure, and you have, like, for example, a character that can cast spells and also hit monsters with the sword. And in the full game, you take them through the process of first hitting stuff with the sword, and then you get the magic ability and you can cast spells. Consider starting your game where you can already cast spells and hit everything, and all the core mechanics of the action are fully revealed. On the other hand, you may have created a really, really sweet and cool character creation screen in the beginning of the game where you can customize your player character. And this is really sweet, but that's not your core mechanic. And players can linger on that and miss out on what your game is really about. Consider making a pre-made character that you chose for yourself and starting your build there so the players can focus on what your game is about, what the core of the game is. Give a measured example of your content. So your game may have like 30 levels, 100 levels, an open world with like 200 locations, etc., etc. You usually don't have to let the players explore the entirety of your game or a big chunk of your game or whatever you've created already, because they might get lost. They might miss out on the good stuff. You know, if you're making a puzzle game or an adventure game or an action game, you have a piece of content, a level that's really good, a dialogue that's really like precise and conveys the nature of your characters, whatever. Put that at the focus and only hint at the scope. So if you maybe show a map that shows all the other levels and tell them, yeah, in the final game we have 50 more like this. But try to focus your players on a piece of content that you really like, it really showcases your game, and only hint at how big your game is. This is maybe the most important slide in my talk. Okay? Decide and design your session time. Think about the exhibition you're going to. Think about how many people are going to be there. Think about who you want to be exposed to, and think about how long you want the session of each player to be. Maybe it's 3 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes or 7 minutes, maybe it's 1 minute. And design your exhibition build, cut your exhibition build to allow for a meaningful experience at that time. Okay, players can linger more, players can leave earlier, but think about how long your player is going to stay with you, or how long you want them to stay with you in your booth, and design your exhibition experience build into that slot. Now, the question of tutorials. Should you include a tutorial process or tutorial level in your exhibition build? And that is a tricky one that doesn't have a clear answer. It depends on the game. And it depends on how familiar are your mechanics. How well-versed the players are in these mechanics before they met your game. So, for example, here on the left side, you see Deadlight, a really cool game by Tequila Works. It has amazing visuals and presentation. The mechanics are pretty standard, 2D puzzle action platformer that players who played a lot of 2D games are probably well-versed in, and they know how it works. So for a game like this, I wouldn't start with a tutorial. I would jump right into the action and show them like a really good set piece from the game. On the other hand, if you see the game here on the left, that's a new game by a new puzzle mobile game by my pals at a studio called Glitchnap. And in this game, it's all about the weird mechanics that are very different from other games. And that happens a lot with the puzzle games, for example, which are all about mechanics that are unique to this game. And in a game like this, I would still include a tutorial level in my exhibition build in order to teach players how to play a game that they've never seen before. So we covered precision, and now we're going to cover stability. And when I'm talking about stability, I'm talking about how to make your game work sort of as an arcade machine. The name of this talk, exhibition mode, is of course alludes to attract mode from the arcade game days of yore. So your game should be working like games work in public spaces, like in the arcade. So we're going to cover loop and the question of exiting. This is a nice metaphor, but we're not going to linger on that for now because we don't have a lot of time. Yes, loops. Make your game restart in 3 types of scenarios. Endgame, if a player finishes playing your exhibition build, the content you cut for the build, make the game auto-restart immediately after that, so that this player, A, knows that they're done, put down the controller and let somebody else play, and B, because people will leave will leave your booth, and you don't want to be chasing after your game all the time and making sure it's ready for the next player. Make your game restart after some idle time. This is very important. A lot of players will play your game, and then midway will get bored or just get the idea, put down the controller, put down the iPad or the mouse, and leave your booth. You might be in the middle of conversation with somebody else, and you don't want to stop and look behind your back all the time to see that nobody is playing the game. So make it, choose your own time. Maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's 50 seconds. You have a feel of how long between button presses does it take to know that the player has left the station, and make the game restart after that. And finally, put a very simple visual prompt, some kind of key or something on screen that makes the game restart. And I'm talking about a very simple prompt. I'm talking about a big button like this in the corner of your screen or something. That's the best scenario. Or maybe in the pause menu, but allow for a very simple restart for the players. This is especially important for visitors to your booth who are not experienced gamers. These people might enter your booth, see the game in the middle of the action because somebody else left it in the middle of the action after they got the idea, right? It hasn't restarted yet, but they see all these things happening on screen, and they might be intimidated. Gamers can be intimidated, and of course, non-gamers will be intimidated, and they'll decide to not play right now because I don't know what's going on with all these things happening on screen, all these different elements interacting with each other. If they see a big reset button, maybe just point to a key on your keyboard that says reset here, and you press whatever, some key, it resets, or maybe it's on screen. They know they have an easy way out to start the game fresh. And it really, really helps. I've seen a lot of people getting intimidated from seeing the game, in the middle of the action. And about exiting. There's a certain part of the population, you all know them, you might be one of them, that when they see a system, the first thing they want to do is try to break it. When they see a game running on a PC, the first thing they want to do is just try to exit the game and see what else is on your computer. So make your game unkillable. If you have an exit option in the game, make an exhibition build where this option is grayed out or doesn't exist, so you can't exit the game from within. There's 2 really, really cool free tools that you can download now, and it takes a minute to set them up. AutoHotkey and Map Keyboard, these are for PC. If you're a Mac user, I don't know what to do with you. But if you're running your game on a PC, Auto hotkey and map keyboard can help you disable keys on your keyboard so people can do like Alt F4 and stuff like that to exit your game, and can help you create little scripts that relaunch your game if your game is out of focus or exited. So if people exit your game somehow, if your game crashes, because of course it's an exhibition, you're showing a new game, it's not really stable yet. So if your game crashes, you can create a little script that relaunches it back again, takes a minute, and it literally saved, these two tools saved all of my exhibitions. All of my exhibitions that ran on PC use these two tools, and it just keeps the game running forever without exiting, and it's really, really cool. So we covered precision, we covered stability. One final tip, consider the bystanders. A lot of people, again, some non-gamers and some gamers also, want to see your game, and they don't want to actually play it. Maybe they feel uncomfortable, maybe they're not sure they are skilled enough in this type of game that you're making, or maybe they're just not into playing right now. You know, they came to see a show, they're with people, they don't want to commit to your booth for a few minutes, but they do want to see the game. This is not a build tip, this is more of like a general setup tip. So try to put a screen that's a bit high in your booth so people who are standing behind the shoulders of whoever is playing can see the screen. If your game is running from a mobile device, try to connect it with a cable to another screen, so whoever is playing, you know, and they have their face buried in the device, other people can still see the gameplay running on another screen. Try to accommodate for a very important part of your audience in an exhibition that just wants to look. And a final tip, never rely on sound. You may have really, really, really sweet headphones that you bought for a lot of money, and they're really, really loud, but the exhibition always wins. And that doesn't matter if you're in like a trade show or even like an art gallery. You know, during peak hours where there's a lot of people around, people will not be able to focus on the sound coming through your speakers or your headphones, even if it's really loud, even if they really, really want to. So if there's like prompts that only happen with sound, think of how you go around them for your exhibition build, because the noise of an exhibition always wins over the sound of your speakers or headphones. So one case study, just really quick to show you what we've done, how we would have done it. Fez, one of the first games I showcased in an exhibition. If you don't know it, it's a really, really sweet puzzle platformer by the Polytron Corporation. Came out in 2012. It has fairly standard 2D puzzle platform mechanics with a twist. The world is actually 3D, and even though you can see it just one plane at a time, you can twist the world to see different parts of it and solve riddles like that. So in the beginning, the tutorial level, you play as Gomez, this little guy, you wake up in your room, then you go outside in this 2D world to the first level. It's your village, showed right here, and you explore it in 2D. Then when you're done exploring, there's the big reveal, you know, when you get your superpower of turning the world and seeing other planes of the third dimension. And then you are back in the village, you explore the same level, but now you can turn it and reveal a lot of secrets through turning it. So it's a really, really sweet and tight opening level. It's a good tutorial. It has a good narrative hooks. But when we showcase that in an exhibition, the first part takes about 5 minutes. You can run through it in like a minute and get right to the turning point, but most people usually don't, because they're not sure what to do, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the level, so it takes about 5 minutes. Most people who play that game played it, enjoyed it, but left it right at the big reveal. So for as far as they know, this is just a very, very normal 2D puzzle platformer, and they don't even know about the interesting core mechanic, because 5 minutes is all they had before they moved to the next exhibit. That's what we did back then, Today, what I would have done is start off the game at the third part, here back in the village. Of course, we'll miss like the excitement of the big narrative reveal when you get your superpower and there's like a real cool cutscene and everything. But it still relies on common mechanics with one twist. And you know, when you want players to experience your game and know what it's about and be able to talk about it with their friends in an exhibition, you want them to start in the place where the mechanics are clearly revealed and they can know what your game exactly is about, even if they don't go through the whole process. Okay, so that's an example. Thank you very much, and I'll take questions now.
Thank you, Shalev.
Thank you for the very good presentation. First of all, I'd like to know if you did apply all of your said here on your current game that you shown here.
No, so I mentioned that before. Not all the tips fit all games, and also what I'm showing here demands a bit of extra work. We applied some of the ideas on the game we're showing outside, but not all of them, because as I said, like the game I'm showing here is very weird mechanics. It's like a text adventure, happens in real time. So not all games fit all the tips I gave here, but most games fit most of the tips I gave here. And I did apply some of my own tips to the game I'm showing outside. Actually, we can go outside after the talk and maybe look look at the stand and try to see how good I am by my own standards. But not all of them, most of them.
Okay, thank you. And did you get some new ideas after you tried to apply this with your new game?
With my new game, no, not so much. It's a very simple demo, what we're showing here. But I did get new ideas by showcasing these things. So actually, with Fez, I actually worked with the developers to create a gallery mode. And that's how I called it back then, an exhibition mode. And it was much, much simpler than what I'm showing here now. So with every exhibition I do, there's a new lesson. Like the last lesson I learned is the final tip in this presentation. It's the idea of sound. When I first began, I thought I could, if I just make put the booth in the right place and get the right headphones, maybe I can get people to listen to stuff. But like recently, I've come to the understanding that you can't trust on sound. So it's building gradually, this list of tips.
Would you say it's smart to invest in services here is great. Would you say it's smart to invest in a very heavy modification of your game? For example, in Fez's example, actually shortening the first level to a 1 minute play time to get to the big reveal, to get all the key points that should grab the attention of the potential player, especially if you're planning heavily on exhibitions. I mean, do you think it's worth it to tweak your game heavily just to benefit from this kind of presentation?
Yes, that's why I'm giving this talk, because I think it's really worth it, but it depends on who you are. If you're a small indie developer, for example, these exhibitions have a lot of meaning for you. The prizes you win, the press you get, they usually meet you in these kinds of settings. That's what pushes your game to get a lot of coverage and a lot of hype. So for indies, I think it's quite crucial. And sometimes you have to tweak your game, but sometimes it's a matter of just cutting it. In the example of, but of course not just indies, by the way. Of course, even if you're a AAA company, you might want to still show something very precise, especially if you know there's like an army of fans and media people raiding over your booth in every fair and every festival you go to. But it's not always that complicated to to that investment that you're talking about. Sometimes it's a matter of just cutting and placing the player in a scenario that's not the beginning of a year, but somewhere in the middle. It's a matter of your engine, you know how your game works, and you know how hard it is to change where the game starts and where it ends. But sometimes it's not that hard to cut a portion of your game and just decide about the exact portion where it begins and where it ends that you show in an exhibition. But I totally agree. If it takes too much time for development, don't do it. But that's why I gave like a bunch of advices. You can apply maybe some of them to your game. I don't know. Does that answer your questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shalev.